The river didn't make a sound tonight, just the hum of streetlights and the dull rhythm of engines far below. I counted the seconds between each passing car. 5, 7, 10. Long enough to change my mind. But I didn't. My palms left fog prints on the railing. The metal was cold enough to sting. I thought, at least this will be clean. Then a headlight stopped, one car. No siren, no shout, just a door opening softly, like a confession, footsteps. Measured, not rushed. Whoever it was didn't ask if I was okay. Didn't tell me not to do it. The sound came closer until breath met air. Then a hand, warm, steady, closed around my wrist. He didn't yank. He just held on. Firm enough that I could feel my pulse against his skin. I looked back. Black coat, gloves, eyes that didn't ask permission. He said nothing. And that was what saved me. For a moment, neither of us moved. The wind pushed against us like a third heartbeat. "Let go," I said. He didn't. His silence wasn't kind. It was command. Something in his stillness told me he was used to people obeying without words. I pulled once, hard. He tightened his grip, not painful but absolute. "Don't," he said finally. One word, flat as a gun barrel. That voice did what the cold couldn't. It stopped me. When he spoke again, it was quieter. Step back, I did. Not because I wanted to live, but because he sounded like someone who could decide that for me. He released my wrist slowly, as if testing whether I'd run back to the edge. I didn't. My legs shook anyway. He watched me, expressionless. Streetlight cut across his face. A scar at the jaw, eyes too tired for their age. I knew that look. The one people get after they've done too much for too long. The look of someone still alive because they owe death a favor. He turned away first. Walked back toward his car. I should have run. I should have said thank you. But my mouth didn't remember how to speak. At the door, he paused. Looked back once. Our eyes met in the half-light. Mine wet. His unreadable. He reached into his coat pocket and dropped something on the ground between us. A business card. No name on top. Just a number and an emblem embossed in black. Then he left. The engine started, idled for a second, and disappeared down the road. I stood there with my wrist still burning from his grip. When I looked down, his card had soaked halfway through a puddle. I picked it up anyway. Why do you save a drowning thing just to leave it wet? The river kept moving. I didn't. For the first time in months, I was still enough to feel my heart beat. He never asked my name. And somehow, that was what hurt the most. Morning came without color. I woke to the mark on my wrist before I remembered the man. The bruise looked deliberate, almost signed. News played somewhere behind me, another body found by the river. Not mine, not yet. The business card lay on my table, edges warped from water. Black symbol, no name, just a number that looked like it should never be called. I told myself to throw it away. I didn't. By afternoon, the silence felt like an order. I dialed once, hung up. The second time, someone answered without sound. Breathing. Then a click. That's when I realized he'd been expecting me. I found him 3 nights later. Not by accident. Private club. Red-lit hallways. Voices that stopped when I entered. He sat alone, jacket off, shirt sleeves rolled, power disguised as calm. When his eyes found me, the room emptied itself. You shouldn't be here. I wasn't invited. That's the problem. Each line fell like a test. He didn't rise, didn't offer a seat. Still, I stayed, I called, I said. I know, silence again, colder this time. He studied me the way people study a weapon they aren't sure is loaded. Finally, you think I saved you? I almost said yes, but his voice made it sound like a mistake. He stood, slow enough to make space feel smaller. Stopped an arm's length away. You don't owe me anything, he said. I know. Then why are you here? I didn't have an answer clean enough to survive the air between us. Because I wasn't afraid anymore. Because his silence felt like proof I existed. Because I wanted to understand the man who didn't ask me to live, just made me do it. He stepped closer, just once. You're shaking. I'm not. He smiled. The first crack, sharp as mercy. When I turned to leave, his voice followed. "Don't come back," but he said it too late. I already had. Sleep refused to come back after that night. I lay in bed with the lights off, tracing the faint bruise around my wrist like it could answer a question I still didn't know how to ask. He told me not to come back, and that's exactly why I couldn't stop thinking about him. There was something cruel in his restraint. The kind of control that protected and punished at the same time. He didn't save me out of pity. He saved me because he couldn't help himself. And that scared me more than falling ever did. The city outside my window kept humming, unaware that something irreversible had shifted inside me. My pulse no longer matched its rhythm. It matched his silence. I tried to return to routine, coffee, work, small talk. But the world felt like it was written in a language I'd forgotten. People spoke to me. I heard noise. He had spoken once and I heard meaning. I picked up his card again. No address, no name, only that black emblem pressed into the paper. It looked like a crest, something powerful, something earned through blood and silence. I placed it on my palm and whispered his voice in my head. "You don't owe me anything." The lie sat heavy. He didn't owe me anything either, but he'd still held on. That paradox became a pulse in my chest I couldn't turn off. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the moment he looked back at me. Not curious, not concerned, haunted. And I wanted to know why. That night, I walked back to the bridge. Not to jump, just to stand where he'd stood. The river looked the same, but I didn't. The air was colder, sharper, carrying the scent of metal and rain that hadn't fallen yet. I closed my eyes and pretended he was there, just behind me, saying nothing again. It was almost enough to feel safe. When I opened my eyes, the city lights flickered off the water like scattered bullets. I wasn't afraid of them anymore. I was afraid of what came next. The need to see him again. The card was still in my pocket. I didn't plan to use it, but the truth sat quietly in my throat, waiting for an excuse. He told me not to come back. I think he knew I would. I shouldn't have gone. But rules never held the same weight once he broke mine. The address on his card led to a place that pretended not to exist. Black glass, no sign, guarded silence. Inside, it smelled like money and metal. The kind of air that judged who breathed it. He was there. Of course he was. Dark suit, sleeves rolled, every movement precise. He didn't look surprised. Only tired that I'd made him right. "You followed the wrong signal," he said. "I wasn't following you." He smiled without warmth. "Then you're lost." A lie met another lie, and somehow that felt honest. He gestured to a chair. I didn't sit. The table between us felt like a border neither of us wanted to protect. "This place, what is it?" I asked. "A business." "What kind?" "The kind that ends when people ask questions." Every word was measured, every silence heavier. He poured a drink not for me, for control. Crystal, amber, stillness. "You shouldn't have called," he said. "I shouldn't be alive." That made him stop. His hand froze mid-pour, eyes lifting slow enough to make breath optional. "Don't ever say that again." The glass hit the table too hard. A drop spilled like blood. No one else in the room moved. I realized there were others. Shadows that obeyed his silence. He dismissed them with a glance. "Then it was just us. I told you not to come back," he said. "And yet you waited." The space between us felt like the edge of that bridge again. One breath, one choice. He stepped closer. Not threatening, not kind, just near enough for his voice to lower. "You don't understand who I am." "Then explain it." He exhaled once. Not a sigh, a warning. I destroy things I try to protect. That should have ended it. Instead, it opened something quiet in me. A recognition, raw and precise. I reached for the glass he'd set down. My fingers brushed the rim. His hand brushed mine. Neither of us looked away. The world outside that touch stopped existing. He said softer, "Go home." I whispered, "Make me." He didn't. And that was the most dangerous mercy of all. The world broke before I saw it coming. One minute I was outside his club. The next, someone shouted, Metal hit metal, and the night shattered. Gunfire cracked the air. People ran. I didn't. He was there before I could think, a blur of black coat and command. His hand hit my shoulder, pushing me down behind the car. Stay down. I didn't argue. His tone made disobedience sound like suicide. My ears rang. Someone screamed. Glass exploded somewhere behind us. He moved with the kind of calm that only comes from violence repeated too many times. And for one insane heartbeat, I wasn't afraid. I was anchored. When the shooting stopped, the world fell into heavy silence. Smoke, headlights, the smell of burnt metal. He crouched beside me, close enough that his breath warmed my cheek. Are you hurt? I shook my head. He didn't believe me. His hand caught my chin, turning my face toward him, checking for blood. His fingers were rough, steady, impersonal. Almost. You shouldn't have been here, he said. You told me not to come back, I answered. I didn't listen. A beat of quiet, then the smallest exhale through his nose, something like frustration, something like relief. He looked away first. Get in the car. I can walk. Don't test me. That wasn't a threat. It was a promise of protection, disguised as command. I obeyed. Inside, the silence was thick. City lights smeared past the window. His hands gripped the wheel too tightly. When he finally spoke, the words came low, almost to himself. They weren't here for you, but they saw you. And just like that, my safety became his problem. The car stopped in an alley behind some warehouse. He got out, walked around, opened my door. I didn't move. He leaned in, eyes dark enough to swallow light. You think this is a game? No. I think you're scared. His jaw tightened. That kind of silence that means you've hit the truth. He didn't answer. Just reached out and brushed a shard of glass from my hair. Slow, deliberate, like it mattered. His glove scraped my skin. I should have flinched. I didn't. The moment hung there. Wrong, wholly electric. Not a touch of romance. Something older, heavier. Recognition, he said softly. Don't make me save you again. I whispered. Then stop doing it so well. His eyes closed. Once. Restraint, prayer, punishment. When they opened, he stepped back. Get some rest. Then he walked away before the silence could become something neither of us was ready to name. He didn't call for 3 days. 3 days where silence tasted like punishment. Then a car arrived outside my building, black, unmarked, waiting. I got in before anyone could stop me. He was there, in the back seat, staring out the window as if I hadn't climbed into his world again. You don't listen, he said. You keep finding me, I answered. He turned finally. Same eyes, restrained, exhausted, too alive for peace. Do you know what happens to people who get close to me? Do you know what happens to people who don't? His jaw shifted. That was his version of emotion. The car started moving, but the space between us didn't. He took me to a quiet house outside the city. Concrete walls, no windows, one light above the table. The kind of place built for secrets that don't need names. You'll stay here tonight, he said. I don't need protection. That's not protection. It's containment, I laughed, soft, almost pitying. Do you always lock away what you can't control? He stepped closer. I control everything. No, I said. You just pretend to. The silence that followed was heavy enough to feel like a choice. He looked at me like he could erase the distance by deciding to, and didn't. When he spoke again, the words came slower, quieter. Do you have any idea what it's like to save someone who wants to die? I didn't answer. Because yes, I did. He reached out, fingertips brushing the table. Not me. A small, deliberate restraint. Why save me then, I asked. Because you didn't ask to be. It wasn't tenderness. It was truth wrapped in exhaustion. I could hear the cost in it. He looked at me like a confession he'd already made once and regretted. I looked back like someone who didn't care what it cost. His hand moved. Slow, uncertain. Stopped inches from my wrist. The same place he'd grabbed me on the bridge. He didn't touch me. Didn't have to. Say something, I whispered. He did, barely. Don't thank me. My breath caught. Not because I wanted to, but because the air turned heavy between us. That was when I understood. Control was his only language for care. And breaking it would mean breaking him. He turned away, shoulders tight. "Go to sleep," he said. I didn't. I listened to the sound of his footsteps fade down the hall, every one slower than the last. The next night, he didn't appear until late. I'd almost convinced myself he wouldn't, that he'd vanish the way men like him are trained to. Then the door opened, slow, uneven. He stepped in, shirt undone at the collar, blood staining the edge of one sleeve. No words, just exhaustion and the metallic scent of violence. He didn't look at me, not really. Just crossed the room, dropped his gun onto the counter, and leaned against the wall like the world had finally asked too much of him. "You're hurt," I said. "I've been worse." "That's not the point." He laughed, a sound too empty to mean humor. "Then what is?" His voice was low, scraped raw. That was when I saw it, the tremor in his hand. I crossed the space before I thought about it. He tried to wave me off. I ignored him. "Sit," I said. He did. Not because he wanted to, but because he was too tired to fight it. I found a towel, water, something to clean the blood. He watched me in silence, jaw tight, eyes unfocused. When I reached for his hand, he flinched. "Not from pain, from memory. You don't have to," he started. "I know," I said. "That's why I'm doing it." The words hung there, fragile, necessary. I cleaned the cut on his knuckles. The water turned pink. He didn't look away. But he didn't look at me either. His breath came slower, uneven. It wasn't the wound that hurt. It was the permission. "You shouldn't see this side of me," he said quietly. "It's the only side that feels real." He met my eyes then, truly met them. And whatever power he had built his life on slipped out between his fingers. "I keep thinking if I save enough people," he whispered, "maybe one of them will save me back." The sentence hit like a confession he'd been holding for years. I didn't answer. I just pressed the towel against his hand, steady, gentle. "You don't need saving," I said. "You just need somewhere to rest." For a moment his face softened, the lines of command turning into something unbearably human. He reached up, brushed his thumb against my cheek, hesitated. "I shouldn't," he murmured. "I didn't ask you to." Then silence, deep, charged, almost holy. He let his hand fall away. The moment didn't end. It retreated. He stood, tension rebuilt, armor sliding back into place. "Get some sleep," he said again. Same words, different meaning. And when he left the room, his shoulders trembled once. Just once. Enough for me to know the crack had opened, even if he'd sealed it shut. It happened 2 nights later. The house was quiet, but quiet in his world never meant safe. He'd left hours earlier, said it was business. The word sounded like violence with paperwork. I was halfway through packing when the door shattered. 3 men, faceless, masked, voices sharp, movements certain. I didn't scream. I'd already lived this moment in my head. They didn't touch me. They just spoke into a radio. "Found her." The next thing I heard was gunfire. Distant, then near. Then silence. Then him. He came through the smoke like it belonged to him. Gun in one hand, fury in the other. 1 shot, 2, then none. When it was over, he stood in the doorway, chest rising too fast, blood on his sleeve again. Not his, not all of it. He looked at me like checking if I was still real. "You said you'd stay hidden," he said. "You said it was safe." It was. He exhaled hard. "Until they used you." His voice cracked on the last word. Not loud, but enough to make my stomach tighten. "What did you do?" I whispered. He didn't answer. Outside, sirens began to rise, faint, growing. He walked to the window, stared into the dark. "They'll come for me next," he said. "But they won't find you." What does that mean? It means I just made sure of it. And that's when I understood. Saving me had cost him everything else. He turned, finally. The same man who once pulled me from a bridge now looked like he'd fallen into something deeper. "I can fix this," I said. "We can leave. You don't leave people like me." His tone was steady, final, a confession disguised as fact. He stepped closer, close enough for the siren lights to paint red across his face. His hand brushed my hair once, slow, memorizing. Then he said the words that ended everything between us. "You were never supposed to stay." My throat closed. He kissed my forehead, not out of love, but forgiveness. Then he walked out the same door he'd broken through, gun still in hand, leaving silence behind like a ghost that refused to fade. I stood there shaking, breath caught between terror and grief. And when the police came, I realized I didn't know his name, only his silence. Days blurred together like fog. Police questions, hospital lights, the smell of antiseptic, all noise I couldn't feel. They asked me who he was. I said nothing, because I didn't know what to call a man who saves you by disappearing. They said I was lucky, but luck didn't feel like this, hollow, heavy, unfinished. The silence he left behind didn't sound like safety. It sounded like a heartbeat missing its echo. Sometimes I wondered if he was dead. Sometimes I prayed he wasn't. Both thoughts hurt the same. Weeks passed before I went outside again. The world looked the same, too bright, too loud, like it had never noticed he was gone. I moved through it carefully, as if walking through someone else's dream. His jacket was still folded at the foot of my bed. It didn't fit me, but it smelled like decision. At night, I replayed the last thing he said. "You were never supposed to stay." It haunted me, not because it was cruel, but because it was mercy disguised as distance. That's when I understood. He hadn't left to escape me. He left to make sure I had a life to go back to, and that realization broke me softer than any gun ever could. One morning, I went back to the bridge. The river below looked cleaner, faster, almost kind. I stood at the edge where he once grabbed my wrist. My reflection moved with the water. For a second, I thought I saw him standing behind me. Same coat, same silence. Then the light shifted, and it was only me. I smiled, small and sad. "He saved me," I whispered, and I think that was enough. Wind moved across the railing, soft, deliberate, like an answer. For the first time since that night, I didn't feel the pull to fall. I felt the weight of staying, and it was heavy, but it was mine. It was almost midnight when I found myself there again. The bridge, the same hum of streetlights, the same pulse of the river below. But the silence felt different now, not empty, waiting. I walked to the same spot where it all began. The railing still bore the faint scratch marks where I'd once stood, too close to the edge. The air was cold, but it didn't sting this time. It reminded me I was alive. Cars passed, headlights gliding over wet asphalt. For a second, I imagined one of them would stop. That same black car, door opening, the echo of footsteps. But no one came, and maybe that was the point. I leaned against the rail, eyes on the water. The city lights trembled across its surface. Gold, broken, beautiful. "I made it back," I whispered. No one answered, but the wind rose softly, brushing my hair aside like a familiar touch. I wanted to hate him for leaving. I couldn't. He had loved me the only way he knew how. Through distance, through control, through silence that meant stay alive. Some people say goodbye with words. He did it with absence, and I was finally ready to understand it. I took out his card, worn, creased, nearly blank. The ink had faded, the number unreadable. I let it rest on the railing. For a moment, the wind didn't move it. Then it lifted, slow, graceful, and carried it into the dark. I watched it fall, not like something lost, but something released. "He saved me once," I said softly. My voice caught, then steadied. That was enough. A car passed behind me. Headlights brushed over the bridge's curve, then vanished. The night swallowed the world again, and in that silence, I heard it. Not his voice, but the memory of it. The same low tone, steady as a promise. "Don't." I smiled. I'm not going anywhere. The wind breathed once more, gentle and final. Sometimes salvation wears a gun.